G'day everyone, welcome back to Mr. Apple's World of Gaming. I'm the man they call Apples, and today we got a fun one for you. This is a review and a bit of a tutorial of a very new game called Nimby Rails. That's not in my backyard rails. Now what this game is, it's a game in its early access phase, which basically means they're sending it out to the consumer and for people to play the game, to give it feedback, to iron out some of the bugs, and to get a bit of money up for the developers so that when it goes into full release, it can be as fantastic as possible. In this game, the entire world is your canvas to build train lines wherever you want. You can make train lines that go across the ocean, so you can connect London to New York, or you could actually recreate the train lines as they are within those famous cities as well. You can do this in any city in the world, in any country in the world, and it's on a 1-to-1 scale. That's right, it is actually using real-time maps. That is incredible for this type of game. So, for example, if you wanted to build a map in my home city of Perth, you can build a map in my home city of Perth. In fact, this is my very own local line, the Mandurah line. So this is going from Perth down to Mandurah. And of course, my own stop here, Auburn Grove. If you wanted to build the London Underground and the train lines around London and England itself, you can do that if you wanted to as well. What I'm doing here is quite a few of the lines in the London Underground, going through them one by one, but I've also extended it through to the south, to places such as Brighton, Portsmouth, and Southampton as well. And of course, if you wanted to build the most complicated train lines in the world, such as the New York and Long Island Railroad, the Metro North Railroad, and the New York subway system, all connected together, like I'm currently doing here, you can do that as well. What I'm going to show for you today is a speed build of the 7 Flushing local and express lines. Now that is a line that goes from Hudson Yards on Manhattan Island through to Flushing Meadows. So if you like what you see, make sure you hit that like button, and of course subscribe for future content, and enjoy the show. Okay, here we go with the speed build. Now to start off with, I'm doing some underground stations at the Flushing Main Street end of the Flushing Line. So there'll be 2 platforms that you build next to each other. Move it with the mouse button in the top left, and then we can head on to the next station, which is Metz Willett Point, which is going to be a viaduct station. So that means they're actually bridged over the roads. So the majority of the stations on the Flushing Line for the first half of the line are actually viaduct stations. So the platforms actually get built on bridges over the roads. So it doesn't actually matter too much about the roads below, because you're actually building above them, which is nice and easy. Because if you were building ground stations, you would have to make sure that they don't hit any of the roads, and the actual tracks themselves don't run into the roads when they're coming out of the stations too. So I'll just go back and rename all the stations. That's nice and easy. You just click on the name when it pops up as yellow, and then you can go through and actually change the name of each of the stations just to make sure that they are in line with what they are in real life. So we go Flushing Main Street, and then from here on in I actually do all the stations, station names at the time of building the station. One thing you'll see when I'm building these is I will just put the 2 platforms down, and then I'll try and move them together. You can be really precise with how close you get these platforms together. You can get them lined up perfectly if you zoom right the way in. The move it option of this game is superb to me. Along with moving the actual tracks themselves, moving stations gets very, very easy. And you can actually get so precise with what you want down to the millimeter if you go in and zoom in close enough. So we're doing all these stations up till we get to Woodside Station, and what you'll see at Woodside Station is that I have layered the station above existing stations that are on the Long Island Railroad. Those ones on the Long Island Railroad I've considered as underground stations, even though they're technically not, but they actually go underneath a road. So for the purpose of the game, I use them as underground stations so that it doesn't hit the road. And then when we build the Woodside station for the Flushing main line, we can actually build the viaduct stations on top of those existing stations. I actually think that's fantastic. It makes sense. But also what you can do when you're building subways, and for example, a line like the London Underground, and you'll see this happen towards the other end of the line in this speed build, is that you can also layer your subway lines, which I think is superb and makes perfect sense. When you're actually doing something like building the New York subway system and the London Underground system, the platforms will actually cross each other and go, they'll be on different levels and they'll be above each other, below each other. They'll crisscross, but one will be 5 meters above the other. You can do that in this game as well. And I think that's fantastic, the way they've done that. Just making sure that there is actually, the stations don't come out at the exact same point. I'll just skip forward here just so we can get onto some of the main stations coming up as we get closer to Manhattan Island. Here we go, Queensboro Plaza. Now this one is actually not quite set out in this way in real life, but I decided to put the platforms next to each other just so it's easy in the game. Yeah, this is Hunters Point. Court Square. The next one I find quite funny, Hunters Point Avenue, because this is Hunters Point with a space in the middle of Avenue, and the Long Island Railway station that is right next to it is Hunters Point with no space Avenue. Well, that's what their official titles are on both Google Maps and Wikipedia. And as you see when I was talking about layering subway stations, the Grand Central Terminal that I've already built, it shows exactly that. I've got platforms going everywhere within that station, and it works perfectly fine. There are no issues with it whatsoever when you're layering them like that, if I can speak properly. Here we go up to Times Square Station, a few famous stations coming up. Getting closer to the end of this line, so we just about put in all of the stations. There we go, Times Square, 42nd Street. And then I believe the next one is actually the terminus for this line, which is Hudson Yards. And you'll see just after this, I'll put in a depot. There is a substantial depot there at Hudson Yards. And then we can connect underground train lines to that depot to begin building the actual train tracks for this line. There we go, we've hooked them up. And now let's start going into the actual build of the train line. So again, try and make it those corners nice and sweeping, nice and wide, so that the trains have actually got a nice amount of room to turn in. If you do it too tight, they're going to go down to like a very, very slow speed. This game uses kilometers an hour, so as its default, so it'll go down to like 30 kilometers an hour. Here you see I'll be able to do a branch line. A big tip for me for branch lines is exactly what I did there. Create a single track going upwards, click on branch and branch it at the end point of that single section of track. And then just continue on and send that first line wherever you need it to go. So into the northern platform of Queensboro Plaza. And then it gives you the connecting point for the other part that you can branch, and I just sent that through to the southern platform, nice and easy. Another thing I do here, because all of these stations now are double platformed, I will just continue on the line going forward with the southern section of the line, which is the local line, and then I'll do the express line coming back. And what this does, you'll see at the end of each section it gives you nodes, and you'll see here I'll be doing the bridge section, and it works out really well. So you put the node in the middle of the bridge section, and then another node towards the end on the ground, and then we go underground. And then on our way back, all you have to do is stick the track next to those nodes, and you know exactly where you need to go. Have a look at how easy that becomes when all you do is follow the tracks that you have just built. and then you don't get strange angles, you don't get the track going looping up around to the top or looping around to the back. It actually builds quite close to the track next to it. Always a big tip when you're building train lines in city building games such as this is try and get nodes right next to each other. Alright, now what we'll do is we'll go through and actually create the line for this track. So we go into the lines setting, change its name. I like to keep them all nice and simple, all grouped up with their lines that are of similar format. So you can see I've done lines on the new the Metronet Railroad. I've actually gone through later on and done the Long Island Railroad lines as well. So they are all complete by the time our trains are sent out on the way. Make sure you click on the arrow in the direction that you are going to start off with. And if you miss the platform like I just did there, it's easy enough to delete and go back to where you came from. So there we go, we are going through all the way up, and then you click on the arrow on the way back at your next terminus station. You need to do all the stations on the way back. Pretty much every city building game I've played does the same thing. So there we go, getting through to the bigger stations as we head towards Manhattan Island now. There we are on Manhattan Island. Make sure you get the right one when you're getting to a station like Grand Central Terminal, because I have got quite a lot of platforms there. So now we are sending a train onto the line. I try and get the train decal to be as close as possible to the colour. Didn't quite work, but hey, maybe that's something that they could work on, is getting the train colours being able to be selected a bit easier. Nice and easy just to put the train onto the line, select which line it is in the line section, and there we go. I just sped through that just because it's basically doing the same thing 8 times. You can clone the trains onto tracks. I find that's actually much easier once you just add one train onto a track and then clone them from there. Here we go, doing the express line. So this one will be start off in a similar format, going up one way, but of course it will miss a lot of those small stations, mostly those stations that are above ground that aren't in connection with other New York subway lines or Long Island Railroad lines. You see here I'll go over the top so that the express line gets its own set of platforms, so then it doesn't run into the back of our local train. There you go, missing quite a few, and we get to Junction Boulevard. And that's the point. Send it back on its way, select the wrong one, and then select the right one. Back to Junction Boulevard, back to Woodside. All the way through to Queensboro Plaza, and then every stop on the way back to Hudson Yards. So there you have it, setting up the train lines, nice and easy. I set up the actual train for the line off camera because it's the exact same as what I was doing before. And here we go, following along with one of the local trains now. As you can see, we've got some passengers on board. I think one of the things the game does need to work on is its algorithm for passengers. It does seem like the passengers don't always get on the trains when they should. So sometimes they'll just wait at the station when that train is really the only one that they can catch, or that train is a perfectly viable one for them to take them to where they need to go, and for some reason they just stay on the station and they'll wait for a quicker train, even though that train might not actually get them to that point quicker. It just might be a faster train. But also what that is trying to do, and you'll see it happen later on, is for a situation where we've got a local line like this, it'll pick up some passengers and drop them off at an express stop because it knows that there is an express train coming. So those passengers will actually take the express train because they will eventually get to their destination quicker. And then this train can just worry about those smaller stations. See the express train going past, that actually ends up coming past us back in the other direction to pick up passengers that this train has dropped. So it actually worked quite well with this one, but I don't think it works well 100% of the time. Definitely something they could work on. For me, in terms of a review of this game, there's definitely, as I said, there's definitely things that they need to work on. Passenger algorithms for one, is something that needs to be run. Branch lines do need to be worked on. There needs to be slip switches in between lines. Perhaps that's something that they could implement. So if you've got lines that are running next to each other, you can just do a slip switch in between the two. So you can go quickly do a branch one way and then branch back the other way. At the moment, you have to wait effectively almost 100 meters before you can branch back the other way. The things that I really like about this is that it is so easy to build your lines, especially when you're building underground or when you're building viaduct lines. The level in detail of having a world map that is 1-to-1 scale is extraordinary in the fact that you can build it anywhere. I use Google Maps and Wikipedia to confirm exactly where the stations are and where the train lines should be. When you're using Google Maps, when you click on a station, such as a metro station, it will actually bold the entire train line for that metro line for you, which is just fantastic and makes it so much easier to go through and build. Of course, you can build a fantasy line, so you can send the trains wherever you want, or you can try to build it to real life, which is what I'm doing. At this point in time, I've done all of the Long Island Railroad. I'm doing most of the Metro North Railroad. I've started to build into New Jersey, and hopefully those videos will come out soon. Thank you very much for watching this video today. Please make sure you hit that like button to help me out. Leave a comment below if you like what you've seen, if you want to see more, and make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on future content. Thank you very much, everyone. I've been Mr. Apples. Enjoy your day.